Can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Sharon.
Oh my gosh, I totally had my microphone muted. Welcome to Wholesale Hotties, a place where ladies in real estate are talking about real estate. I'm your host and MC, Sharon Lee Smith, obviously having trouble working my mic tonight. But we also have my co-host, Donda Mullinex, and Monique Fell with me. And today our special guest is the one, the only, the original Property Pam. Hey, Pam, how are you? Glad to see you here.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's start with who you are, where you're from, and how you got started in real estate.
Well, I'm Property Pam. That's how I brand myself because my last name keeps changing, so it's just easier to.
Me too.
It's easier to do it that way. So, because Property Pam is never going to change. I'm originally from the west coast of Canada, and I have been in this area for about 18 years on and off. And that's kind of it. I mean, I started. Really, my journey in real estate started when I was a little girl, and I remember going to my grandma's house. She lived in a trailer park, and the man came around to collect the rent, and he had this big round keychain with all these keys on it, and he seemed so important. And I just thought to myself, I remember looking up at him and thinking, I'm going to be that important one day.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So that planted a seed, I guess, that experience. And then later on as a teenager, I used to make money by going to thrift stores and finding designer brand stuff that was in good condition and then going to the posh consignment stores and selling them for more. So I got on board with the buy low, sell high idea was, kind of, part of that journey. And when I was a teenager also, that was back in the days when the real estate magazines, they printed them. And so whenever I went to the grocery store, I could pick up a for sale by owner magazine or, any other number of real estate magazines. And I would spend hours upon hours. I don't even know why. I just would spend hours imagining owning all this real estate. But I thought that I had to buy a house and then pay for it in full and then save up a down payment and buy another house, in my teenage mind, that was how it worked. So,
little did we know.
Right? Yeah. And then I was like, and I don't want to be an agent because then I have to work evenings and weekends. So anyways, that was.
Well, that's true though, right? We never sleep.
Right. That was my thought process back then. So, and then I just, back in 2000, I was watching an infomercial from a guy named Russ Whitney. I don't know if
I remember him.
Yeah, remember that, but that was a long time ago. And, so I sat there and got sucked into this infomercial and I was like, this is it. This is the thing. I've always, I can go to this and learn about real estate investing. So I went to the weekend seminar and, it was like jam packed with upsell stuff. And I didn't do any of it. I just took copious notes during the seminar and bought a bunch of books and started getting out there and networking and making connections and finding mentors. And I answered like the course suggested, I answered an ad in the newspaper. It's under the money section. I don't know if there still is, but there was a money section in the newspaper and it said money to lend for real estate. So I called up, this number and it ended up being Jack Jacovitis, who was the, granddaddy of EDC, now run by Nick Jacovitis. So the Jacovitis family helped me get going in real estate. And not long after that, I connected to Trig and I was on the board at Trig for a little while. And I don't know, that was kind of it, just really started buying and selling a lot of properties. I had an office building down on Granby Street and a staff and all that good stuff. And then the market crash of the mid to late 2000s happened. And I learned a lot of lessons. It very financially dramatic time in my life. I just overnight, I lost over $5 million worth of assets. It was crazy. And,
Wow.
Being from Canada too, when I first moved over here and tried to get into real estate, I was in my, I think I was about 28. No, let me think. No, I was closer to my mid 20s. And, I tried to get credit and apply for loans and things like that, like they suggest you to do, so you can be upsold.
Right.
And everywhere was denying me. They said I didn't have a credit score, which is worse than a bad credit score apparently, because I was from all the bills and all the cards and all that kind of stuff was in my ex-husband's name. So I had to go and do a prepaid $500 credit card at Bank of America to try and get on the radar. I mean, I had my Canadian credit report and it was great. So thankfully the Jacovitas family was, happy with my Canadian credit report and a duplex that I had bought in Canada. And,
Right.
we went from there. So it was amazing that just a handful of years after that, I had, over $5 million in assets from like a $500 prepaid credit card to, growing that. So, and then disaster struck when the market, completely shifted overnight.
Right.
I went from having lineups for outside of my flips and properties for people to outbid each other to not being able to get a showing to save my life, really,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty dramatic.
Yeah, that was a crazy time for sure. How did you go from that 500 to the 5 million or whatever that fast? That's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Just having the right funding and the right backing, or how did that process happen for you?
Well, I didn't tell my husband at the time. I didn't tell him what I was doing because I knew that he would be mad at me. So I secretly,
okay.
Yeah. So I secretly sold the house. This family that I connected with, EDC used to be a private funding company, and now, of course, they do new builds all over the place and everything. So back when they were doing private funding, when I first connected with them, they kind of took me under their wing, really, and mentored me. They found me my first flip. They referred a crew to me, and then they did the loan on it. So it was kind of a package deal. So I just came home one day and I had this paycheck for $14,000, and my husband was like, "How did you do that?" I knew I just had to show the results. I couldn't just, make it sound like some kind of crazy pipe dream. I had to, actually do it and produce something, not just
proof of concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So after that, I was hooked. I had to go out and start, finding my own crews and my own deals. And I just followed all those old school programs and all the old school methods. I read lots of books and took every kind of course I could to up my game. And when I first was getting going, I really wanted to try every method of real estate investing. And then later on, I kind of realized that might have been a mistake. I should have just figured out, what I was good at and just really leaned into that and laser beam focused on that instead of kind of being more willy-nilly and not really having a proper business plan or focus. So, now rebuilding after the market crash and all that kind of stuff, I'm doing it in a it feels like a much more stable way where I'm not, insanely over leveraging myself and all that kind of good stuff. And I'm taking time to enjoy the fruits of my labor, which I didn't do before.
Yeah.
Good for you. Were you an agent back then when you started investing, when you first got started?
I wasn't. No, I started in 2000 and I went on to get my license in 2017. I sort of, my ex-husband was military, so we moved overseas for a while, got stationed overseas after the crash and I, kind of spent some time regrouping and licking my wounds, as it were. Yeah.
Would you tell somebody that's looking at getting into real estate, if there's advantages to being an agent, or maybe what the disadvantages are as an agent as an investor?
I really toyed with this a lot when I first got going, because the consensus back in 2000 was to not get your license, just find a good agent, an agent who you can either train or who already is just good at working with investors. And so that's what I did for many years. And then when I wanted to kind of get things going again after the market crashed, I went on and got my license in 2017 after coming back from overseas and all that good stuff. And I just felt like that would be a great way to earn some income while reestablishing my network and refamiliarizing myself with all the neighborhoods, because I knew things had changed and all that kind of stuff. So and it really served that purpose. Now I'm an advocate of having a license when you're doing real estate. You just have to be aware of the licensing laws and the laws with DPOR and with our local MLS and with your brokerage, and follow those along. I still do some stuff that doesn't involve my license. I still do a lot of stuff that doesn't involve my license at all, which we're free to do. We don't need to, we're free to buy and sell our own real estate as we see fit,
Yeah, so are you buying things creatively, or I know you talked about at first you were doing traditionally, and then you found that you could get money from a private investor, private money lenders, or PMLs, as we call them.
Yeah.
Have you bought any creative deals and stuff? I know Monique and I are involved with Subject 2 and stuff. I just was curious if you're involved, or is that what you're doing?
Well, I feel like a lot of it is when I connect with a distressed seller, I have all those tools in my toolbox. So the biggest thing is to analyze the situation and see how the numbers work the best, and I bring out the most appropriate tool for it. Really, I still have a mix of everything. I have my rental portfolio that got cut in half after divorce, but some of the properties survived in my name, so that's a good thing.
So you're able, as an agent, you're able to give your clients some options where some agents aren't familiar with all these other options. So you're actually what we call a unicorn agent, because you can help a lot in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. And I spend a lot of time educating other agents too, because they're like, how do I work with investors? I'm like, you don't want to do that.
Gee, thanks, Pam.
I should hire somebody else really to represent me in real estate transactions, because I'm terrible dealing with myself.
So funny. Tell us about deal analysis. You kind of just touched on that. What are you looking at? How are you analyzing deals?
Well, I know that there's a ton of automation right now, which definitely has its benefits. And so I try to think through what are most people doing to find their deals, and I try to do things that are not that. For example, AI isn't in doing a straight deal analysis from the MLS, the programs and AI and all of that good stuff is not quite up to speed with being able to analyze the photos. For example, I had a bank-owned property that I spotted on the MLS, and it was a little cheap one, and it just was hanging around forever, and I never even clicked on it because it just wasn't in my buy box. It was a small three bedroom, 1 bath. It was attached, so it was kind of townhouse style in Portsmouth and in a flood zone. Just all the stuff that I wasn't really looking for. But it stuck around for so long. I just thought, well, I'll click through the pictures and see, try to figure out what's going on with this. And when I clicked through the pictures, I realized from looking at them that it looked like it was actually 4 bedrooms, not 3 bedrooms, and it looked like there were 2 bathrooms. Not one, because the pictures were so different from each other, right? Yeah. And so, and I thought, well, I'll go and look at it, because from the pictures it looks like it's a 4 bedroom, 2 bath. So I went and looked at it, and it was under 1,000 square foot in the listing too. And I took my laser measurer and I measured the rooms, and it was almost 1,500 square foot, and it was a 4 bedroom, 2 bath. So that changed everything on that property. I since it had been on the market for so long, I put a really low offer on it.
Wow.
And I got it, you know. So that's the kind of opportunity that I try to look for, particularly on the MLS. You know, I set up various searches, and I still definitely don't catch everything because you just never know what people's personal situations are or motivations for selling. You know, I had a listing recently where it was a divorcing couple, and the husband, soon to be ex-husband, I guess, he lived in the house and wanted to be there for every showing, every inspection, and all of this. So whenever anybody went through the house, he was like happy handyman guy, not doing things properly, like trying to do all this work around the house himself. And he would make a big, the listing said the property's being sold as is, but he would make a big list of everything he planned to fix in the house. And so we kept getting these not as is offers and big repair lists after the inspections and all this kind of stuff. And after going through that process 3 times and the wife getting super frustrated and just saying like he's killing every single deal, we were getting the property under contract at the list price, which was $225,000. And from the start, I said, hey, the same thing that I always do. We can list it, and I think you can get this much by listing it. It's going to take time and the inconvenience of the showings and the realtor fees and processes and all that kind of stuff. Also, here's a cash offer. You can just stick that in your back pocket. I know it doesn't work for you right now. That's totally fine. And next thing you know, she just said, that's it. I have a new house I'm trying to buy under contract, and I need to sell this. Bring me back your investor offer for $165,000. I was like, okay. So, you know, that was like one of those things where, and on the MLS listing, it didn't say that it was a fixer-upper. It didn't say it was, you know, an estate sale. It didn't have any kind of things on it that would flag maybe a distressed situation for an investor. So I just knew about their situation and put all the options on the table and let them decide.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So you, when you analyze properties for you to purchase, how are you running those numbers really? And honestly, like for me, I know it's location dependent, right? So something in like Portsmouth, I'm doing at a totally different formula than downtown, you know, Virginia Beach or downtown Norfolk or even Richmond or whatever.
Yeah.
What are you looking at for numbers? Like, what's your formulas?
Well, you know, like in terms of my personal buy box, I typically, I know that I can get funding all day long at, you know, 70% of the ARV. So if I can buy it and fix it for that much, then that's kind of the traditional thing. But I play with those numbers a little bit because I don't mind kicking more money in if it's a Virginia Beach property. You know, and I'm going to be more conservative if it's, you know, an ARV of like 150 or 200 in Portsmouth versus like a 400K ARV in Virginia Beach. You know, I'm a little more aggressive on the ARV calculation for, you know, properties that fit the medium price point a little more and are in more desirable areas.
Are you using that same formula when you're talking about buying rentals?
Not necessarily. If I just rentals, I prefer for them to be relatively turnkey. You know, or an actual BRRRR, like a real BRRRR, that the numbers really work actually as a BRRRR. Because I've done a few BRRRRs where, you know, as what happens in flipping and renovating. Sometimes we go on and we have all this experience and make our educated decisions, but every now and again you tear open a wall and it's the whole thing's eaten up by termites or you know, those kinds of things. But you know, I've had a couple of BRRRRs that I've held on to as rentals, and had I known that they were going to turn into bigger projects than I anticipated, I would have game planned them differently. So I try to be really conservative if I'm going to gonna burr it, I really, I have to buy it deep, and it has to be in decent condition, and I have to get up underneath it. I have to send my guys underneath it to do an inspection.
Yeah.
And the way that the market is starting to shift a little bit, there's more space for that. It used to be like basically I had to have my guys who went under the house glued to my hip and just go and look at all the properties with me, because I had to make offers on the spot, in the last couple of years, how the market has been. But now I'm actually able to put that as a contingency in contracts a little more. Of course, the off-market stuff is a totally different animal, because people just want zero contingencies on those, of course.
Right.
Yeah, and the non-refundable EMDs, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Can you explain BRRRR to people that are watching this, maybe for the first time they're trying to get involved, but they don't understand what the BRRRR method is?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. A B and 4 R's.
Yeah.
And so by that you mean, right, you're going to buy this property, you're going to renovate it so it may be a fixer-upper so you can get it discounted. Then you're going to rent it out, and you're going to season that rental. By seasoning, we mean, have it for 6 months or whatever, which can show income and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're going to refi into a DSCR loan.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And in doing that, you're going to maximize that loan out so you can pull all your cash out of the property, right?
Exactly.
So then that's where you can repeat, because you're taking those funds to buy the next one.
Yeah. Or for example, if you paid cash for a property, and this is, you have to watch your seasoning on this, because it's almost better to have a loan on a property for the seasoning is a little easier than if you pay cash for a property, because then I've had lenders say, well, we need to source the cash, and I don't know, it can get complicated. So sometimes it's better to have a loan on the property. But I mean, let's say you buy something for $150,000, easy math, $150,000, and you put 50 in, now you're 200 in, and it's worth 275, 300. Then you pull a DSCR loan, get your 200 out, and then go and repeat that process with another property. And then you have, if you've done the numbers properly, you should have a cash flowing rental, putting a few $100s in your pocket every month, and have your money back out of it to repeat the process.
What are you looking for your minimum monthly return, your return on investment for a rental? Just because I know at first they don't always, that you don't usually get a bunch of money until the market starts to fluctuate.
Yeah. And the thing is too, a lot of the times when you first place a tenant, it takes a little while to stabilize the property. The tenant moves in, and there's still a couple things that aren't right. You have to go back and kind of do a few more things once they actually move in and start using everything. So I factor a couple $1,000s in for that kind of thing, and also that the important thing to factor in is the DSCR loans have fees. The last one I did was for $135,000, and my fees on it were fees plus closing costs, I should say, were $13,000.
Wow.
So when you're really trying to do a BRRRR and really trying to pull all your money back out, make sure you're factoring in those types of things too. But typically, I'm shooting for $400 or better per door.
And then, are you doing a war chest?
And that's covering principal, interest, tax, and insurance, PITI, as well as an 8.5% property management fee.
Okay. Do you put so much aside, also like percentage that, like, we call a war chest sometimes, that you're like, just in case, like when the HVAC goes out, I got this account that I put a small amount or whatever, 10%, 5%. Yeah. Do you do that?
Yeah, I try to keep a couple $1,000s in my accounts, like for each property, for sure. Just to factor in, like you said, the basic repairs and vacancies too. I mean, rentals, at the end of the day, the way that they shake out, that's not how we're getting rich. I mean, our rich come from, the tenants paying the house off and gaining, equity by way of improvements and market appreciation. And then you can utilize the equity, right? You can really my plan is now to never sell the asset. I just want to tap into the equity and get an equity line and use that to do other deals. I love wholetailing, picking up a property, usually off market, that is that's just undervalued, and sometimes it's a borderline tear down, but it's super cheap, or sometimes it's almost move in ready. And the last one actually that Sharon and I worked together on, we spent $6,000 on it, just doing a couple things, because we just saw an opportunity to put a mini split in the garage, because the garage was already finished, but it didn't have heating and cooling. So we threw that in there and just cleaned it up, and that was a good little one. Those are my favorite, just to buy something that's just discounted from wherever I can find them, and then list them, usually on the MLS, to wholesale it.
Cool.
I prefer to just do a trash out and landscaping, but sometimes with stuff doing other stuff too.
Those are the best ones.
Or nothing at all.
So how are you finding your off-market properties? Are they calling you being an agent? Is that part of the advantage of being an agent? Or do you have wholesalers, or do you do both? I mean, how's that working for you?
Yeah, I mean, having been in the local market for 25 years, I have quite a great established network, and I have a good network of agents too. Whenever I go to networking events or things where there's other agents, I make sure everybody knows, hey, I'm buying.
Right.
So I get quite a bit of just referral type of things that way. Agents who are like, man, I don't know what to do with this property. How can I make it work? And I'm like, let me look at my toolkit.
Right.
So, I get a lot that way. I have some great wholesaler relationships that bring me some good ones. Case in point with Sharon.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. You get some duds too, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. I try to really take the time as often as I can to run the numbers on the properties, because if you don't prioritize time to do that, or have someone really well trained who has the eye for it, to do that, then you really can be missing out on some great opportunities, because the good ones still always go fast.
Right.
Yeah, and I sift through the MLS too, and sometimes find stuff on the MLS. We do a little bit of marketing here and there, or going to auctions too, and picking stuff up. So we're kind of open to all the ways that deals come. Yeah.
So what is your current portfolio look like, and what are your long-term goals with that portfolio?
Right now, I have a mix of single family and small multifamily, like four and less, in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Portsmouth. I would be open to adding to my portfolio probably in all the 7 cities, but I highly favor Norfolk because that's where I live, specifically Ocean View, or pretty much anywhere in Virginia Beach, just because of the market appreciation overall in Virginia Beach. In our area, the values in the 7 cities increased by a little over 5%, but in Virginia Beach for 2024, it was 13.5%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Just for that, but and for the amount per door that I look for, it's if it's a solid property in Virginia Beach, then I'll be happy with 200. That would be just fine.
Right.
For a Virginia Beach one to hold for a longer term.
And do you do all of this on your own, or do you have like partners you work with on any of them, or just everything's just by yourself?
Every now and again, I'll joint venture. Sometimes I do stuff with my fiance, Jim Leland. He's also a realtor and an investor. His bread and butter is flipping. He's been a Class A contractor for many years. So we work well together because I do more agent stuff and more wholesale and the finding of the deals. So that works out. And so every now and again, usually at any given time, we have 1 or 2 that we're working on together. But he's turning 4 or 5 a month, so it's just we both had our own successful businesses before we met, and sometimes we don't agree on that, like, you know, how we want to
Imagine that.
yeah. So, but we're learning as we work and try out doing deals together and stuff. We're learning how each other works, and it's probably good for us both because we're both kind of set in our ways and like to do things our own way, and it's forcing us to to look at alternatives and you know, work with somebody else as a fellow chief. I don't know if that dinging is my computer. I hope it's not. I put do not disturb on my phone, but
I
this
think it's Donda.
It was me, sorry.
I wasn't
Money.
I just
We have our agent sending me texts, and I thought my phone's on quiet, but it must be connected to this. Oh, it's Jim. Actually, Jim's computer. So I'm getting Jim's text
Dang
message.
it, those gyms.
all the gyms. That's right.
I just got my laptop like 2 days ago, so I'm like, I don't know what's happening. It's probably my fault.
No, it's not. I don't know how to. It's a Apple, and it's all I can do just to get on this thing, let alone how to figure out how to just silence something like that.
It's not that distracting. It's just every once in a while we're like, ding, and they go. Okay.
Sorry that you're hearing this. Oh, it says I can mute for an hour. Let me mute for
Well,
1
there
hour.
you go.
Figure something out here. Okay, this is
Now, Pam, do you happen to have like children, or are you like?
Yeah, when I first started in real estate, I was pregnant with my youngest, and he's 21 now, and he's in the Army. He is based in Germany.
wow.
He just got married, so I'm helping his fiance get her overseas screening done so she can go over there and, or his wife, I should say, I keep saying fiance, his wife. I'm helping her, you know, do our overseas screening so she can go and join him. And I have an adult daughter also. She's 23 and she lives in Nashville. She's a flight attendant.
Well, tell your son thank you for his service.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So,
For sure.
yeah, I don't know. You know, when I have new investors coming to me for assistance, I like to share the 1% rule, you know, because that's sort of a safe, easy way to look at numbers on properties, because I have new investors bringing me these like wild things that there's no chance that the numbers work on. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I'll, you know, let's say that you are all in on a property for $2,000, and that's your closing cost to purchase it, your purchase price, and your renovation money. Your all-in cost is $200,000 on a property. You should be able to rent it for $2,000 for 1% of that. And if it's 1.1%, or you know, the greater the percentage that you can rent it for, the better. And that also falls in line with how the DSCR loans do their calculations too. So you know, you can help yourself by kind of generally thinking to yourself the 1% rule. And with new investors too, I have the conversation about what are the goals. You know, if you just want to maximize your cash flow, maybe you're looking at a multifamily in Norfolk or Portsmouth. If you really want the highest market appreciation and you're less concerned about the cash flow, then you know, maybe we'll look in Virginia Beach. You know, so it depends on the purpose for the person investing. You know, sometimes people have a great income and they just want something that's going to appreciate where they can park their money. Then, you know, the Virginia Beach stuff is great for them. And some people really need a monthly boost in cash flow. Then we work those numbers and look for the best opportunities like that.
So do you have
And
go ahead. Go ahead, Monique.
Go ahead, Monique.
and that's with your real estate as a licensed real estate agent, right?
Yeah.
Or you do that as consulting.
Yeah, but even people who are looking to learn the investing game, you know, that's the most important thing is being clear about what your goals are and what your needs are most immediately, and then, you know, planned out, you know, a year or two in advance, because that's the most important thing, is to get really clear on that, and then you can work on the how once you really know what your goals are, what your then you can create a roadmap.
So
That's
kind of
true.
reverse engineer it. Right?
Right, exactly. Like, here's the goal. So what do I need to do today?
Right.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
So are you doing a
go ahead.
training course? Because you keep talking about other investors, people asking you questions and stuff. Do you help other people like through a course, or you just do this like local people that come to you and ask you, you just help? Or
I really need to because I just get people asking me all the time, I really want to get started. I want to do my first flip. I want to, buy more rentals of whatever, fill in the blank. Most of the time when people are thinking investing in real estate, they're just thinking flips or rentals,
right.
and there's so many different ways to invest in real estate. So I've talked to Jim about us doing something together, and we just need to, I told him what we need to do actually is to go somewhere tropical that's like boring. There's nothing to do there except lay on the beach, and all we'll do is think and game plan, a course and a structure that's actually going to help people, because we repeat the same things often again and again, and the percentage of people that actually take in, so you invest time with somebody, and the percentage of people that actually take action and move forward with their goals on investing is really small. So when your time's at a premium, you have to start being careful about how you're committing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what you have to do. That's kind of how I started with real estate, is went away from everything, holed up in a hotel with my partners for 3 days. We just went through all the stuff, and this is the plan we're going to make the plan. And you just have to get away from all the noise and be able to just to sit back and think about things and really map it out.
Yeah. It's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff, and the management and returning all the calls and all the texts and all the emails. You can spend your whole life doing that, and then you're like, wait a second, where was my big goal? All that happened. I somehow got off the path of that. Yeah, we would like to definitely develop something training wise, and whether that's a course that we would sell, or a book that we would put together, or tracks to run on for agents, for investor agents that come and work with us, whatever that looks like. We haven't quite prioritized the development of that yet, but it's definitely on the radar.
I love it.
Yeah,
That'd be great. Between the two of you, you guys could cover pretty much every topic, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, let me see. He's 40 years of construction, of being a Class A contractor, and jumped into real estate in the mid 2000s. And I started in real estate in 2000. So we have a lot of years between us combined.
Right.
I told him we should write a book called "What Not to Do in Real Estate."
Why not? That's the best lessons, right? Is the mistakes.
Share all of our disaster stories and be like, we really screwed this one up.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know what? That just brings a question to mind. What is the worst deal that you have had to deal with? Like, what's the hardest one to get across the finish table? What's that type of thing? Tell me a nightmare story that you experienced.
Man. There's been some really challenging ones, and I mean, probably the ones that have been the most challenging are when we're dealing with people who have really sadly mental health challenges, or very elderly people, and we're doing our best with this situation, but also there's we're having to operate with as much compassion and kindness as we can through the process. So those situations are tough. A lot of the times things it's the unexpected things that come up that are the most difficult to work through. Jim had one recently that the house was fine. The people were living in it. He bought it. He was doing just a cosmetic tear out and replace kind of rehab. And they had to tear out a little section of wall for something they were doing, and it was completely eaten up by termites. And so they tore out that section, but then it just kept going and going and going and going until they were pushing on the walls of the house, and the walls were falling over. They had to like come in and support the whole second floor because it was going to collapse, because they were pushing over all the walls because they were so destroyed by termites. And when they pushed over one of the walls, it snapped the gas line below the cutoff valve. And so it's free flowing gas. And so they shut down the whole street, and the fire department's there. And all he had was like a demo permit, because he, just to keep the city off his back, because he wasn't doing anything else that required a permit.
Right.
So then, of course, the city's all over him, and they're like, the whole bottom floor of the house has no walls. This is not.
I was just doing demo.
It was over the course of the weekend that they really were just planning to do demo, but then it turned into a whole entire everything. So he's still going to be fine on that because he bought it deep enough, and he has his own in-house crews. But
Right.
So you just be really careful, to especially new investors, go around and put on all the walls, kick the baseboards, get your termite and moisture guy to look around. And go in the attic too, because if you go in the attic and there's signs of termite damage up there, that there's probably a whole entire wall, at least one that's totally gone. So we take risks that are, that are like that. We'll go in and just, if it's a situation where we know we're competing against other investors, and we roll the dice, and every now and again, a turd pops up like that. The most challenging ones, though, that have really been the most roller coastery have definitely been, dealing with the humans on the human side. There's been some really interesting divorce situations and family dynamics when it's an estate sale, trying to get everyone singing the same song sheet. So you just have to. Kindness and compassion just goes such a long way when you're understanding with people, and you're genuinely wanting to help them. We go into it with this attitude of, first of all, trying to see if there's a way to keep the people in the house. Is there a way for them to catch up? Is there a way for family to help? What are your options? Or, we try to see if there's anything like that. If that's not going to work, then we try to work out a plan for them to move on with dignity and with their credit intact as much as possible. And that doesn't mean the sheriff showing up at the door and dragging them out of there.
Right.
So we try to work with that, and really having a heart for creating a win-win with people, and enabling them to move on with their lives in a really stressful situation. And I feel like I can, one of the best things that we can do as investors is really making that kind of human connection, not only with the people whose houses we're buying, but also in our networking and connecting with other investors. Because one of the things that connects me with people when I'm looking to buy their house is to say, hey, I know how this is. I went through a divorce too. This is super stressful. It's I really understand it, and there's real estate involved, and you guys are trying to figure it out. Oh my gosh, I filed bankruptcy. I know how that feels too. And I can relate. I've had a property get foreclosed on, and I've been through all the things like that, and I just know how stressful it is and overwhelming. And identify with people on that level, then it's really helpful. And I'm not recommending everybody runs out there and gets divorced and goes bankrupt. And
Yeah, I totally understand it. Like, I really love working probate and estate deals because I've been through having to bury a spouse and I've been through like that type of stuff. And so I can put myself in their shoes, and that compassion really helps win the day. You know what I mean? It helps you understand where they're coming from and helps you, have that empathy, and to be able to, figure out what best is going to help them.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and being authentic is really important. I mean, if you can, people are smart. If you're running into any kind of situation with dollar signs in your eyes, people get that vibe. Or if you're desperate, people can sense that. You know, if it's the one and only deal you're working for the whole entire year, and you have to make it work, or you're going to be having your own financial problems, then um, people can feel that, and so you have to make sure that you're in a calm and stable place when you're out dealing with people, and have it in your mind that you're helping them.
Right.
Really.
That brings up a great point. Like, so what is your mindset routine? Like, do you have meditation that you do? Do you have different like what keeps you in that good positive state of mind?
I would say uh, I wake up every morning and I have this. I have a you. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book "You Are a Badass" by Jen Cicero, I think it is. She has a 365 day calendar. So each day has this kind of money and wealth building orientated saying. So I wake up and I read. That's where I start my day. Is I read that. Um, Typically, I eat something healthy and hang out with my dogs for a little bit, and bless you. And I work out. I try to go every day to the gym to play some ball or racquetball or do something. Bless you.
Yeah.
So I just try to stay balanced. I go out into the sunshine as much as I can. I ground my feet into the earth, into the sand. We're blessed to live on a little beach house on Willoughby Spit. So I walk out there and put in the sand and just, I try to do that. I try to, deep breathe. Sometimes I get into meditations, or I go to, there's healing centers around here that do different events, meditations and sound baths and all the woo-woo stuff. Sometimes
I
I go
love
to
it.
Yeah, sometimes I go to a yoga class. Like there's a Buddhist temple over there, close to Newtown in Baker, that does yin yoga, and it's a really it's really,
Really?
yeah, really kind of, you don't do very many postures during the class, and the idea is to just like really relax your body into the postures. So it's a deep kind of thing. So I don't know. Yeah, I just do as much of that as I can. Sometimes I go a couple days with really not doing much because it's chaos, but then I remember that the reason I can handle the chaos is because I have practices to keep myself well and balanced. Yeah, and it could be simple stuff like, just like I said, hanging out with my dogs or having a conversation with one of my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Pam, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, you'll find me by looking at Property Pam. Like, you Google it, and I'll be everywhere. But the best way to find me, I guess, my handle on Insta is Original Property Pam.
Okay.
On Facebook, my business page is Property Pam Realty. So those are probably the best ways to connect and reach out and to check out the stuff that I have going on. I like to post silly reels from going out and looking at properties. You asked about what some of the challenging ones, and I had this one where it was flipped. We did a beautiful job. I'm getting ready to list it. My landscapers were just finishing up at the property, and my landscaper calls me and he said, "We found a grave in the backyard."
What?
Oh my God.
So I'm online, like Googling how do you exhume a body from your property and like all these things, I'm freaking out. And then I finally was able to track down the previous owner, thankfully. And they said, oh, we buried some of our dogs back there. I was like, oh,
Oh,
because they were like,
Oh, wow.
they were like real tombstones with real, like, they seemed like actual, like human graves back there. So,
oh, geez.
Wow. That's funny.
Oh, wow.
you never know what's going to pop up.
Funny. I did have a contract once on a house up in Henrico area, and they did have a family grave in the backyard. It was like 4-person grave. Like, who wants to buy that? Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a lot. That would probably creep most people out.
Right?
Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Anyway.
Some of the real estate stories, like I've heard, the one guy's dealing with a property in California, the Bash Bros, and they ended up with people that were squatting, and then they burnt a boat down, and then there was a body they found. I mean, it's like the never-ending property they were trying. I was like, as far as I know, I think they finally got it cleared and sold, but every time they would clear the land, people would bring trash. I was just like, they were like,
That's crazy.
and they're here in Arizona, so you're like having to hire people constantly to
Right.
go. But it's like some of the stories are crazy. You just like
Sometimes it's,
stuff up.
I'll be honest, there have been some properties that I've taken Sage over to because I'm just like, there's just no way something else just came up with this property. Seriously, I'm like running the Sage and like,
oh my God, again. Yeah.
I just posted a reel the other day on Facebook, and it was we had 7 contracts on this property, and the 8th one finally closed, and it was like
Wow.
just one thing after another. You'll have to go on Facebook and just watch the reel, but it was really. Like one guy's in the middle of the transaction. He's like, oh, I'm, as it turns out, I'm getting divorced. And so I can't buy this property.
Yep.
Okay. And
I had that happen on one of mine. Yeah.
and another person like, oh, I talked to my cousin and he doesn't think it's a good idea for me to buy this property right now. Okay.
Wow. Your financial advisor. How's he looking? Is that how you're gonna live? Maybe not.
I mean, it was just 7 in a row that were just like that. We had an offer from an investor, a cash offer. It was great. We agreed to everything, and we're like, okay, we just added some kind of disclosure verbiage about us being agents or being licensed. Or that's the thing. If you're licensed, you just have to say owner/agent on everything. It's disclosed every time you have conversations on all your print or advertising or online stuff. Make sure it pops up somewhere, definitely in your contracts. So we made one minor change and sent it back for the final signature, and nobody could find the guy ever again.
What?
We just totally ghosted everybody. We're like, we don't really know what just happened.
Was it hard to get it released? Was because if they're not going to buy, they have to sign a release too?
Well, the contract was missing that final initial, so
Oh.
yeah.
It was voided anyway. Well, that's good.
That's
Oh my
good,
goodness.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a property. I remember I had a property listed. It was a few years ago, probably like 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It was a townhouse over there in Lake Edward for $65,000, and of course, I had my phone was blowing up, and everyone was trying to get it, and it was a short sale that actually got approved at $55,000, but we had it listed at $65,000. So I had like right away, I don't know, something like 15 offers on it. And it was right when the floods hit Atlanta, and my client was in Atlanta, living in Atlanta, and his house got totally flooded, and he didn't have a phone or anything like that. And So I had all these people like
Wow.
pressuring me, like I'm trying to play games and get more offers. I'm like, that's not what's happening. I literally have no communication with my client, and I have no way to get a response for you. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
That's great.
you're an agent that can do short sales because you have to be licensed to do that, right? You don't, just not any agent can do a short sale.
no, any agent can. I mean, I would suggest that if you've never done one before and you come across a situation that requires a short sale, to educate yourself and or reach out to somebody, hopefully your broker or somebody else that would be happy to mentor you and help you along with the process, and definitely hire a professional short sale negotiator. I used to negotiate them myself, and I just after a while felt like I was losing the will to live, so then I realized wholesale negotiators were worth their weight in gold. So, that's the thing to do.
Right.
Wow. That's funny. All right. Well, we are getting close to the top of the hour. So I just want to ask Pam, what is next for you? What are you doing in the near future? What's your next project or whatever? Or is there anything that we can help you with, or that other people should come to you?
Well, the way that I have my plan set up is like the four legs of a table. And I decided 100 is my number. So on one leg, I want to have 100 rental properties. On one leg, I want to have 100 notes, seller financing notes. On one leg, I want to have 100 agents that I personally recruited, working with me and my agent group at my company. And then the last one is probably going to be the education piece. Have 100 podcasts or 100 books, 100 subscribers to a training program. It's going to be something that involves the idea of paying it forward and stuff like that. So
I love that.
yeah. So if anyone, sees themselves, participating in any of those things, whether it's, coming along to work beside us and learn in the agent capacity, it's really, we're investor agents. So if you're unfriendly to investors, it's probably, or not having an interest in investing, it's probably, not the best fit to come and hang out with us. But we're looking for the deals. We're continuing on with the bread and butter of doing, for me, it's mostly wholesaling that I'm looking for, and some agent stuff, I guess. And for Jim, it's going to be, am I allowed to talk about him? I know this is ladies.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah.
Yes, you can.
We're sort of a team, so he looks for more traditional flips too. He neither one of us are looking for really heavy stuff unless it's something that we're buying super deep and we're going to sell it on to another investor. So that's it. Yeah, we're buying. We do some lending a little bit too. So I've got the self-directed retirement accounts and a full life insurance policy that I lend out of. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, it's the time and it's the money and time freedom plan, and I'm making my way there. And really, I love traveling, so usually doing 2 or 3 trips a year that last like between 1 and 3 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah. I used to do a vacation of the month, even if it was just a little staycation, going and, staying for the weekend down at the ocean front or something like that, or going to Massanutten skiing or something like that. I just tried to do it once a month, and it was really beneficial. I found that whenever I try to, leave and go have fun, I get a ton of business in.
That's how it works.
Positive energy because you're in a happy place.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm going to go and relax and do nothing.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I get really good ideas. Like I do some business idea journaling kind of stuff too when I give myself the space to step away and have some relaxation time.
Yeah, and no distractions. Your house is a distraction. You're at home, you're like, oh, I need to clean that or take care of this and that. And so it's like
Yes.
when you can go do that, it's definitely gives you more time.
Yep. And I've got these crazy little dogs and yeah. So I'm, I know that if all I did was work, that I could make my goals happen a lot faster. But after the experiences I had in the past with real estate and how imbalanced I was for that period of time and how it actually affected my most important relationships, I'm just not willing to do it again. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to pace myself a little better now and take the vacations,
And for health
Awesome.
purposes too. I mean, it keeps you healthier too when you're not.
Yeah, balance is the name of the game more so these days than, being a complete 24/7 diehard like I have been.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pam, it's been so
Awesome.
nice
Well,
meeting you.
yeah, it's been super great, Pam, and I'm so glad to know you. But I'm so glad that you were able to come on. So we're gonna sign off. Have a good night, and everyone, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.